MIDDLEKAUFF! Baby, hey!
Oh, what's up, everybody? If you are with us live, it is Sunday night. If you're listening to this after the fact and watch this after the fact, it is Sunday night. MIDDLEKAUFF's got his arm in a sling over there.
Tennis elbow.
What's
going on here?
We are coming to you after a wild roller coaster of a day of football. And today we've seen some things, John, we've never seen before, and hope I won't ever see again. So we'll dive into all of that. If you are watching on the YouTube, our podcast is down in the description below. That's great. I'm Guy. That's John. If you are listening on the podcast, you can check out the YouTube. That is in the description as well. All right. Well,
share that podcast, people. Share that podcast.
You know, the last show we did, John, we had some debate. We didn't really quite know what we were going to do. Are we going to come on live right after the Niner-Eagle game? Or are we going to wait until later in the evening? And we both decided let's wait and let everything kind of simmer. Let's hear Kyle Shanahan talk. Let's watch Bengals Chiefs. Thank God we got a good football game. And yeah, so now it's time to go.
You know, and I think many people listening to this, if you're watching on Sunday night, listen to the podcast late Sunday night, maybe you've had some Tito's, because I wouldn't blame you. Some people say a single, a lot of people get doubles. If you went triple or quadruple, it might be the time to go with a nice quadruple Tito's and nothing but Tito's, and just maybe like a lemon or lime. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, do you want soda water? Do you want some bubbly water? Do you want some cranberry? No, I just want Tito's and ice in my enormous glass. That's all I want.
Tito's handmade vodka. Maybe on other days you could mix in some ginger beer, like John said, or some tonic. But if you go with just the Tito's on the rocks, that's still just a great choice, because it's the unanimous judges' choice double gold medal at the World Spirits Competition winner, the Chairman's Trophy for the world's best vodka tonic, and much, much more. It's still made on the same land where it all started in Austin, distilled from corn, gluten-free. Get some more recipes for the Super Bowl party, which is coming. You're going to go to somebody's house for the Super Bowl, or the Pro Bowl, your Pro Bowl parties, John, or you're gonna have somebody over, or you're just going to sit alone in the dark. Whatever you choose. Tito's, distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly.
Remember last year when the cops were waiting outside for Alvin Kamara after the game because he beat up a guy the night before in the club?
After the Pro Bowl game.
Yeah, out of the locker room. He walked out and they were, Mr. Kamara, come with us.
That's right. Whatever. Did that ever get adjudicated? Is that done?
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like it kind of went away. Beat up a guy at the club. No one really cares. Vegas get it tossed. I don't know.
Just an off-season situation, maybe.
It feels a long time ago when Mac Jones was doing the gritty.
John, congratulations to the 49ers, who managed to play 4 quarterbacks in the 2022-23 season. A run that we'll probably never forget. I mean, a 4th-round quarterback appearing in a conference championship game. I don't know if it's happened. I asked the Chat GPT bot, and it only gave me a couple of 3rd-string quarterback situations. So we watch history on Sunday. We can all say.
I think you could argue 5. Because they went a couple wildcat plays with McCaffrey, and it wasn't like they would not have ran the wildcat. They would not call wildcat plays if not for the position they were in with a quarterback who couldn't throw because the 4th-string guy, the backup, who showed up in December, was concussed. And honestly, it looked like he also had his elbow, shoulder ripped off, didn't it?
It was the same play. Yeah, by Ndamukong Suh of all people. You're right. I mean, to say it was 5 because the only reason Josh Johnson, we got to a quarterback, the only reason Brock played again as the sub for the sub is because Josh Johnson got hurt. As Jimmy was,
I honestly think we could encompass last season, Guy. We could encompass last season where they also made the NFC Championship game and lost. They had multiple quarterbacks who also were injured. Trey Lance injured. Hurt his knee against the Cardinals. Could not play the following week. Jimmy was back off also an injury, and they had to bring another quarterback, and Trey was inactive. And then Jimmy, I'm pretty sure, got hurt later in the season, and Trey came back, and then Jimmy just battled through with injuries. They've had more quarterback injuries than any goddamn team you've ever see over a 2-year period, with the same guys just getting hurt over and over and over again. It's insane.
Well, I think the other thing it takes to the next level, it's not just that their fourth-string quarterback played in the NFC Championship game. It's that their fourth-string quarterback is a guy who's been on more NFL teams than anybody in the history of the sport. Josh Johnson, 14 teams. I checked, John. He's been on 5 teams in the last 4 years, and 3 of those teams are NFL teams. Also an AAF team, definitely an AAF team, and an XFL. Was there something other than the XFL and the AAF? Was there a third?
Back, and then COVID, it got canceled, remember? I'm pretty sure he was in that league as well. He played in both.
The which?
I mean, he's played in all the leagues.
Yeah, I've got him in the AAF and the XFL.
Didn't he play for the Niners in 2020? Because I swear to God, I saw Fred say, well, George, he was here in 2020.
Maybe he was he got no stats listed on the Football Reference. Maybe he was on the team.
Yeah,
somewhere.
So
USFL was he? That's, to me, that takes to another. It's not like Nate Sudfeld was the guy that came into the game in the NFC Championship game, right? Or Chase Daniel or Chad Henne, a guy who's been on more teams than any player in the history of the league, was their next option. And I, some of the post game coverage I saw watching TV was like, well, you never think that it's going to come to this. It's like, well, I mean, if you're the Niners' backup quarterback, you absolutely think it might come to this. You definitely think that.
Is there another sport? I guess like if LeBron or Curry goes down, but if your team's fully healthy and you're in like the NBA Finals or the Conference Championship, like Kevin Durant went down in the NBA Finals, like, oh, the Warriors can still win it. It wasn't until Klay Thompson tore his ACL that they were done. In football, in college, because like, oh, that's the next 5-star. In the NFL, when the starting quarterback is laying there, or is like, oh, he's going to the tent, or he's going to the locker room, you're like, are we serious? Like we just get royally screwed. Whether you're rooting for the team, whether you have $2,000 on the 49ers, regardless where you stand, it's not, especially in this situation where Josh Johnson is the backup. You're like, is this really happening? Is this really happening? He's out. Is it just like he's feeling pain? And honestly, it wasn't until the end of the game, when the game ended and you watched him talk, that you kind of figured out what was happening, because he stayed on the sideline. He came back into the game. He threw 2 total passes, but they were all obviously like little screen passes. That was just the most bizarre experience I've ever had watching football. Honestly, I don't even think it's close.
I know. I definitely, games like that I'm invested in, it's very high on the bizarre list. By the way, because Chiefs and Bengals just ended, worst way to lose. Game in which you play one of the weirdest games anyone's ever seen. That's what I would say the Niners game was. Or right in the game, you're going to go to overtime. Late hit out of bounds on Mahomes puts the Chiefs in field goal range.
Don't even think it's close. I would rather, as a fan or a player, you're saying?
Well, I don't know. Whatever. I
don't even think they're in the same world. You would always rather be in the game and have a chance to win it and have the entire game till the last second matter than what the fuck we just witnessed this morning. What we witnessed this morning, I don't know what they're doing now to torture people. I know waterboarding, we're not allowed to do that anymore. Americans, other countries are. I would make people watch that. Like, that is torture. Even Eagle fans are like, what? This is weird. The thing was just a bizarre. If you're not, that was torture. The Bengals, it sucks to lose on a walk-off field goal in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, not walking on a walk-off field goal. Late hit out of bounds when you're about to go to overtime. Like, to me, the penalty is what makes it horrid. The penalty is what
did it. It was 100% the right call.
He did do it. I mean, it's 100% of the time. If you're out of bounds, you get hit. It's a late hit, right? Because sometimes
not just hit. He was shoved.
Shoved. I know. Shove is not as bad as a hit. I would have preferred to not see it, but
Chase shoved him from behind.
Yeah, it's a penalty. It's a penalty. I would have preferred to not see it, but it's a penalty. I just hate to see a game end like that. Like like you get the field goal because they were not going to get in field goal range. You get in field goal range on that play. That's what I hate about it.
Yeah, listen, the officiating today, start to finish, even in the bizarre game and the good game, was horrendous. I mean, all these individuals should be relieved of their duties immediately. They are so goddamn bad at their job, but I'm not going to get into the officials. But I think you would rather the entire game mattered. The 49ers game
I know which game I would have rather watched. 100%. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
No one wants to lose.
Osai, was that the guy's name?
Yeah.
He'd prefer to lose like the Niners lost. He's probably the only one.
Well, then he did like a fake the torn ACL. I'm good, actually, guys.
I couldn't even imagine what it must have felt like to be him on that bench for the Bengals. I mean, that's
now. Remember, they changed the rules in playoffs. Overtime, both teams would have got a shot. So even if you score, no sudden death. Remember the pushback from last year with the Bills. So
yeah, which is fine. That would have been great.
Which I'd argue is a stupid rule.
I don't care. I just seeing that penalty in that spot where they weren't in field goal range was brutal. But at least I watched one 4-quarter football game today.
Yeah, I actually left that game thinking like a lot of respect for the Bengals. That's just Joe Burrow's a legend. Like,
yeah, Joe Burrow and Mahomes was incredible.
That was just. I just thought that was what people always told me, like Marino Elway in Montana. YouTube just doesn't do stuff justice. Like, you have to experience it live. What that is right there, those two guys, like that is what I always heard about Marino Elway, Montana. Like, that's what that is.
You
like
see
the highest level, the best of the best.
Like what we were talking about the other day. I'm not going to be surprised if 15 years from now we look back and we had this era of great quarterbacks, especially maybe in the AFC. We'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts. And like two of them don't win championships, right? Like Burrow's clearly great. Is he going to win a championship? It's just hard. He's got Mahomes. He's got, who knows, Herbert. So Josh Allen, like Josh Allen and Burrow, that's probably the better way to put it. Are they both going to win Super Bowls at some point? Are we going to have Burrow, Mahomes, Josh Allen all going to win Super Bowls? Odds are, I think no.
Marino never did.
I think odds are no, right?
Aikman, Favre, Young did. So you just
Aikman, Favre, Young.
I would say our generation of quarterbacks: Peyton, Brady, Roethlisberger, Breeze. I mean, most of those sweet guys did. Who would you say the only guy? Rivers. Like, I wouldn't put Matt Ryan in that category.
Yeah,
he'd be right on the fringe.
Roethlisberger 1-1, Breeze 1-1. Yeah.
Can you give me 1 second? The heat is cranking right now. I'm going to be screwed.
All right, John's going to go turn off the heat. While he does that, I'll hit a couple of these. Prince KO said those Trey Lance up the middle plays came back to haunt Shanahan. See, what I was thinking was, does he still have those plays for Josh Johnson? But then I realized, I don't know if I've never really seen Josh Johnson, so I don't know. If your quarterback can't really throw, you'd prefer to run him. That's what I was watching this game thinking, like, all right, do we have any like a zone read for Josh Johnson? And then I realized, I don't know. Can Josh Johnson run? I didn't love the idea. Like when he came in, I'm just talking about my mindset. I don't love the idea of relying on him to throw, but I'm not exactly sure what it is that he can do. He actually hit some throws.
Also hit a couple that, yeah, I mean,
he hit some throws. I thought he looked better as a thrower, crazy to say, than I expected.
Hit McCaffrey on a dump off that wasn't terrible.
The fumble was just there have been so many moments in sports watching lives, right? You mentioned like the Klay Thompson ACL tear. I would put the Josh Johnson shotgun snap fumble after he hit a 10-yard throw to, I think it was to Debo to start the 2-minute drill. And you're watching Kyle like, a minute 30 left in the half, down by 7. You're getting the ball first to start the second half, all 3 timeouts. This is where Shanahan loves to run on first down and see what happens. You're like, should he be, conservative here or not? And he's like, you know what, fellas, let's do this. And he hits Debo, and then bam, Josh Johnson's just looking somewhere, I don't know, anywhere but the ball into his hands and fumbles, and that was kind of
there was not similar, but there was a play with Mahomes where the ball came out of his hand.
Yeah.
I do think in the cold environment, and Kansas City was colder than Philly, he's on the sideline early in the game. He's not expecting to come in. Now, granted, he'd been in the rhythm of the game, but I thought when that play happened, just a lot's going on in his mind, right? 2-minute drill, thinking of the play, like, do I actually know this fucking play? Like, I at halftime, I was wondering, like, did it cross his mind? Am I sure I know where everyone's running?
Well, he's
thinking of all
multiple
these things.
pages on the wristband.
And then I don't even obviously the one thing the guy really had, like he's a good athlete. If you just snapped him the ball and he's looking, I think he catches it 99.9% of the time. I think he had a lot going on in his head. 2-minute drive, down 14-7. Kyle's probably like, we can get her in the game. They're probably looking at him in the huddle like, just get us in field goal range. We go 14-10 to half. We get the ball, like we're alive. That fumble, and one thing to fumble, it looked like immediately he fell on it, and then clearly it was like this pile was going, what is going on? And then who knows how that ball bounced, because that was the game.
It was the game. I'm with you. I thought live he fell on it, and then when you see the replay, I don't know if it was McGlinchey's foot is kind of there and kicks it off to the side, and fumbles are never as easy as they look, but that was the game. The game was many things, but
think about this.
That's where I felt like this is going to be.
What was a worse way to lose, this or the Bengal game?
Yeah,
I'd say what was the worst way to lose? What everyone witnessed this morning or this afternoon or around lunchtime with the Eagles and Purdy and Josh Johnson, or just last year losing a real game with your starting quarterback the whole time?
Oh, I think this.
This is the worst way to lose. Because it is just you're just sitting there for so long.
Because you weren't in the fight.
Like you're burning alive.
Yeah. That's a great point. But you weren't in the fight, right? That's it's one thing to lose. It's another thing when you aren't.
You don't even have a chance
to get to this spot, and then you're not in the fight.
The thing just turns into a joke. You're like, what? I can't even. You're not allowed to talk shit to us because this isn't real. Like you guys get to win the game, but you don't get to blast us. You get to anoint yourselves, win the NFC. But there's no ever like looking over the dead body after the game like you get to do with the Cowboys or you did last week with the Giants. That's not how this thing rolls. You don't get to do that. And that's what sucks about a big game. Like ultimately the Chiefs, we beat you guys fair and square. You had Joe Burrow. We had injuries. You had injuries. Calls shitty both ways. We had Josh Johnson. And Jimmy laughing on the sideline.
Ryan said would rather have lost to the Cowboys than go out like that.
That's not true.
I disagree with that, but I understand why somebody would feel that way. Right. That's the better to have not loved at all than to have loved and lost, I would say is probably where that comes from. But part of what made the game so weird too, for all like we can go through it, we'll go through all the stuff that made it weird. But part of what made it weird is Purdy goes out, Josh Johnson comes in, and then the game doesn't fall apart for the Niners immediately. Like, they're in the game, right? Really, when you start with Purdy's injury comes on a fumble. The defense forces a 3-and-out. They get the ball right back. Like, they were in that game, like, really in that game. They were going to be in that game to start the second half, if not for that fumble at the end of the first half, right? It was going to be a one-score game. They're going to get the ball first coming out.
Well, that's what's pissing me off. I
like that's part of it, I think, is it feels like it should have fallen apart. It was 31-7. It feels like it should have fallen apart a quarter before it did.
Guy was 7-7 for the last drive of the first half. Eagles scored, and then the Niners got the ball back. Like, that was a real game when McCaffrey scored. So when I see all these fucking people on Twitter going like, oh, the best defense in the league, 31 points. Bullshit. Like, I mean, come on. That is not bull.
Like, that's not a real take. Like, get out of here with that.
That is bull. No, that's a real take in Eagle land. Trust me.
No, but that's not a real take. Like, that's,
So, yeah, it was when McCaffrey, but even when McCaffrey scored, you just went, you're going to have to keep this thing so ugly. And even the Niners, who yearn for these ugly games, it still felt like it's going to be very, very difficult. I had no faith in this quarterback.
Well, that's a great point, right?
And then listen to the players after. Let's be real. They didn't really either.
No, they didn't. But I do think, like, to your point on 31-7, it's like as they got a score behind and 2 scores behind, all of a sudden now it becomes a pretty stressful game for their defense. To me, when it's 7-7 or 14-7, like, your defense can you can
agree.
You can convince yourself to play. Yeah. Now you're falling behind. Now you're committing penalties. Now you're gassed. Now you're pissed. Now you're like, that's really, I think, when you can sense
that was part of the TD drive when it was 7-7. There was like 8 penalties on the drive. I hate hands.
Well, there were 3 first downs on penalties. Yeah, I also hate hands to the face. Then I saw the penalty. I'm like,
he's being held.
I know. I once I saw it, as someone who hates the penalty, also I kind of understood it. Like you can't. The center had, or whoever it was, had no ability.
Did you see the controversy?
Eyeballs.
Did you see the controversy about them jumping off sides every play, the offensive tackles? And Duke, the offensive lineman on Twitter, was like, "It's real." It's like they're legal. It's like,
did you watch?
Guy,
did you watch
fucking
his
leaping
breakdown?
back before the ball's even snapped?
Did you watch his breakdown of why it's a loophole in the rule?
I got about a minute in. It's like, you're boring me. Get to the fucking point.
I didn't watch it just because I saw it. I'm like, it's a loophole. Okay, whatever. My attitude was just like, how can you start before the ball is snapped? Maybe there's you're allowed to like reset your back foot. I don't know. It doesn't.
Well, that's it. That's it. You're not allowed to sway. You're allowed to reset your back foot. Lane Johnson is going like this, and you look, Kelsey has not moved. You're like, he is getting a step. And he's like, Trent Williams does it too. I'm like, yeah, not like this. Because Lane shot out of a rocket, right? I'm getting texts like, are they jumping off sides? It's like, sure looks like it.
I know.
I get the loophole. I mean, is Sirianni Belichick? Or?
I just know you're not allowed to start the play before the ball snapped.
Then, I mean, this game got weird fast. I would say even before Purdy, the second play of the game, Fred Warner's laying there dead. Now, it was just a stinger. He was only gone a couple plays, but that rattled everybody. It did. Anyone watching that game who ain't rooting for the Eagles, and every Eagle fan's like, I hope he doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And then there was a play after a couple injuries that happened when Bosa's on the ground, and you're like,
bleeding.
I didn't see him get hurt. What happened to Bosa? And then they show the review. He gets leg whipped when he's on the fucking sidelines. And even he said, yeah, it's not a good sign when you get taken out when you're on the sidelines.
I think he said a cleat went an inch into his leg. He was bleeding profusely for the rest of the game. He said
an inch to 2 inches.
He was bleeding the rest of the game from that play. That was a very bad omen. That was a very bad
leg whipped. And honestly, if he didn't jump, he might have got really taken out. I mean, he kind of avoided it a little bit, right? He was airbound by the time the guy kind of clipped him.
Well, how about the inactives come out a few hours before the game, and Elijah Mitchell just isn't playing? That was the other one. That was the one that really started the day, I think. Then the Fred Warner, then the Bosa, the Devontae Smith play, where you don't get a replay till after the timeout. And there was a bunch of, I saw, what Shanahan said was, we don't get, we just, all we can see in the booth is TV. All we can see in the booth is they're just watching the game, the TV broadcast. And then obviously the video board in the stadium. And Shanahan said after the game, he was going to throw. They go for it on 4th down and 3. Hurts gets out, puts it. Devontae Smith and
they clearly stoned the play, right? There's nothing there. He has to kind of scramble drill. Devontae just takes off.
And Kyle said he was thinking about throwing the challenge flag, even though he didn't know. And then he looks up and he sees a replay that he thinks is a catch because it's, one of the 2 replays probably that we saw. And then they come back from break. This is what, like we were texting about it. Belichick's point is, why is it my job as the head coach to officiate the game for you guys? Guy speaking, I have no problem with the officials on the field missing that play. Even Hufanga said incomplete, and then he didn't really argue because he didn't really know. But I think
when Devontae's doing this thing and they're all running, it's like, it's telling you, hey guys, we better go fast. I didn't catch the ball. Like I don't know their signals, and I knew that. Like, guys, he didn't catch the ball. He's doing this. He ate the quarterback.
And the NFL apparently gets all of the feeds back immediately. Like it used to be, you have to wait for the TV truck to show you the footage. And I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't. Why did
you notice Burkhardt said later?
Why does Andy have to do it for his game? Well, why do they have to do that?
I like Kevin a lot. I do. I like him a lot. Burkhardt. Oh. But a couple series later, he came and basically not apologized, but like defended Fox. We just shoot it. It's like, no, you guys had a fucking angle that we didn't see. Bullshit. Not on you, Kevin, but whoever in that goddamn truck, he needs to go. And then and listen, you could argue in the first half, like, what do you do with your timeouts? You might as well be aggressive in this game. You should have thrown it. Because then the next series, Sirianni outduels him.
Well, I mean, Sirianni knew, though. Like, Sirianni knew, right? Like, it was clear. I understand the not using it from I don't want to lose one of my challenges. I don't want to lose my challenge on the first series of the game. The timeout thing,
you do get two, right? You don't get one. You get two challenges.
Second one, if you get the first one right,
I thought you get two challenges.
And then you lose,
the
and then once you get 2 successful, you have none left.
I thought you have 2 challenges.
Yeah, but regardless, I understood. It looked like I understood. I understood. I just don't understand why it's his job. Like, why is it?
But it is. I mean, I hear you, and
I'm
disagreeing with it.
I
But
just
that
don't
was
think
that was a huge swing in the game, which
was
ultimately, if Purdy's going to get injured, it wouldn't matter. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, who's to say? I guess Kyle's game script is the same whether the Eagles score in the first. I mean, whether the Eagles score in the first series or not. So he's running that same play on the 6th play of the game, maybe one way or the other, whether it's 0-0 or he's down 7-0.
Whether it's fair or not, he didn't have the angle or he didn't. He should have challenged the play, which he didn't, and it got them a 4th and 3, which led to a touchdown. It was a devastating non-challenge. And then, there's just no way around it.
He chose. I can't say he should have challenged. He chose not to challenge a play he would have won a challenge on. I agree with that.
When I'm saying he chose to not challenge a play in which he would have won, you're right. He didn't know. He didn't know any more than any of us knew. But Devontae knew. And that's a Belichick thing. Like, you kind of got to be locked into everything, even though he's trying to look up. Aren't you paying a guy up in the booth? Do they get a special feed? I'm not privy to all this information.
I think in the booth, they just get the TV. They're just watching the TV.
And then, listen, if he doesn't have the information, he pussed out whatever. The play call he had on Purdy's injury, you could argue is beyond atrocious. And I understand play action's a big part of everything they do. But to have a backup tight end trying to block their best pass rusher, it's just, we always make fun. I remember forever when I was doing Raider stuff and Khalil Mack, like putting a tight end on Khalil Mack. When anyone does that with Bosa, it's one thing. I would have no issue if it was 85. It's like, he's proven to be, beside Gronk, the best blocker of the last decade. Anyone beside George, maybe use check, but that's just a tough assignment, man. To have your backup tight end attempt to do that and just completely whiff and get your guy. He got killed
on a slow developing play with a guy who doesn't get rid of the ball as fast. The one thing I would say, like we've talked about this with Garoppolo, is Jimmy, when he decides to throw, the ball just comes out quicker. I haven't hand timed it. Maybe someone will hand time it for me and tell me if that's correct. But
I do wonder if the development of the play, you got to let, because they were trying to let Ayuk get deep, and even Purdy's like, I saw him coming open.
Absolutely. There's no question. I'm just saying, like, it happened last week at the end of the first half where Brock got hit by Micah Parsons, who came from the same spot, and the Niners hit Juwan Jennings on the next play, and then they kicked the field goal before the half, and it worked out. But it was similar. Front side pressure in which he doesn't get the ball out in time. On a play that I assume, if Kyle broke down, I don't think he talked about the play itself afterwards. He probably thinks that Debo coming in that motion is going to make Hassan Reddick whatever dance or not.
He was asked about it, and he said, "Yeah, the tight end's job is to block the guy." Well, Kyle, that's a fucking terrible play call.
I understand that. My point is, though, I think that play, some design of it, the reason you run that guy, I would imagine, is for the secondary, and you're probably trying to keep the edge pressure off him. So what they did on those that was the 6th play of the game. The first 5 plays of the game, I think they might have blocked Hassan Reddick with 5 different guys. They blocked him with Juszczyk coming across. Juszczyk hit him with a pretty good block coming across, like in motion at the snap, and then Juszczyk hits him. There were a couple plays in which he wasn't really involved in the play. Banks had a great block jumping out and hitting Reddick. Everything was happening so fast with him. But to put Charlie Warner one-on-one with him.
Was it Croft or Warner?
Croft, whichever. I thought it was 89, but it's inexplicable. Inexplicable on a play that you know is slow developing. It's one thing if it's a quick screen to the other side, if it's a quick screen at him, a quick slant. Like, there are plays in which Brock gets There are plays in which Brock gets the ball out quickly. But that play was not a quick play. I don't get it. Especially if you'd watched the game last week. Hassan Reddick was flying off the left edge constantly.
I also think
rocket.
Think about the offense they go against all the time. It's a lot of manipulating, just the Eagles offense, manipulating defensive ends. So those guys are kind of used to, kind of stopping, starting, knowing when to shoot. You saw Bosa had a play later in the game when he was still playing his ass off, where he just kind of mirrored the blocker and the quarterback. He almost got a safety. But it was like, when you go against offenses that are constantly messing when your own offense is constantly messing, trying to get you to shoot down or shoot up. By week 18, NFC Championship or whatever whatever week we're in now in the NFL season, these guys have played 18 games or 17 games plus. I guess they've only played 2 extra, 19 games. He's only been on the team this year. He's had a lot of reps against this team. Here's the other thing: Hassan Reddick, for a little bit, didn't he play for the Arizona Cardinals? Like he's seen Kyle Shanahan before, so that was a play that he clearly felt very comfortable to shoot. And when to shoot. And obviously he's one of the more explosive pass rushers in the league.
It might be because he's lined up against the tight end. That might probably be the first thing that gets him fired up.
So listen, some plays work, some plays don't. That play had, just devastating ramifications, not just on the game, but we'll have to, by the time if you're listening to this on Monday afternoon, you might have some pretty bad news. It was got the guy destroyed. I don't even remember too many hits. There's a difference between pocket pressure and just kind of sitting duck and just a guy kind of untouched on a play like that. That's a play to get any quarterback in the history of the league hurt, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of open and the guy's whiffing and one of the best pass rushers in the league, because part of a 7-step play action drop like that, how many steps is he's getting some build up speed there when he's hitting you, right? It's not one of those where it's just I'm a couple feet back from behind the center. He's way back there.
And not really, even though I'll pull it back up here. Even though the play is coming from his front side, did the fake take his eyes off that side of the field?
Purdy called it his blind side.
Might have. Did he?
Well, Purdy said my blind spot. I didn't see him coming.
Yeah.
Not his blind. Like he said, I was blind. He basically said I was blind. I didn't. I was looking down the field.
Didn't feel him. Yeah. He's looking down.
It's what Matt Ryan and those guys used to talk about in this offense where Rodgers pushes back. It puts you in uncomfortable spots. When I just take a 5-step drop, when I do play action, turn my back to the defense, I'm looking and I'm just assuming everything's good.
Yeah.
When I take it it's why a lot of these guys like the shotgun, because I can kind of see. My eyes are everywhere. You're Kyle Shanahan is the puppet master on that type play for your health. And guys, let's just say it, they're all getting hurt a little differently. The amount of injuries this guy has had on his offense, I don't put the defensive injuries on him, but the offensive injuries have been astronomical over the years. And the quarterback thing now, guy, if you factor in last year when Jimmy and Trey both got hurt, and then this year, has to be a historic stretch of quarterback injuries for a team that was successful. A lot of times if you just say quarterback injured, you just look in the history of the league, like a team that had 5 quarterback injuries over a 2-year stretch, you'd be like, yeah, they won 6 total games. And this team's won 2 straight years, a combined 23 regular season games and 4 playoff games.
There's only one thing left to do. See if he can hurt Brady.
Yeah. Well, that's
Tom versus time and Kyle Shanahan.
Well, I was talking to Coward, and he's like, Tom never gets hurt. Well, in that situation, Tom could easily get hurt. Tom does not run the offense that Kyle runs. Like, to me, Tom can't move. Kyle runs plays where his quarterback, 1, has to move, and 2, are a sitting duck for his play to develop. Yeah, Tom never gets hurt because he just hits the ground. Like, he doesn't run these plays.
Yeah, so most people watching this may have it committed to memory, but it's play action. So he turns his back, and then he's got Debo running around, kind of looping around the formation. He doesn't really look at Debo.
There's like a safety net, you're saying?
Like sometimes there's a double fake. Like you take the snap, you turn, you fake it to the running back, then you fake it to the guy coming on the end around. There wasn't that. There was just a fake to the running back and then turn and look upfield. But it was still, he turned his back for the play action. And Hassan Reddick, I'm laughing just because it's just outrageous how quick he gets there. I've watched this play several times now, and he's standing up. Oh, it's 81, as everyone has already corrected me.
With the Olay block?
He gets his hands on him. He just gets beat. He just gets... And 72, good job to
this specific Like when this happens, this is why the NFL is on such a different world than these other sports. Because forever, for the last 7 weeks, as every week went by, like, God, Purdy's way better than all these guys. God, Purdy locked to be the starter. God, Purdy wouldn't even do Brady. And then one thing happens, you're like, you start rethinking everything. And all it was, not because he played poorly, we didn't even get to see him play, just because he got injured. Now you're like, well, can you take a guy with an injury history? We're back to doing the same thing again.
Well, like you said, we'll know more Monday, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more this week. But if it's Tommy John surgery or something like that, which I saw, did Jake Delhomme didn't tweet it. Somebody would tweet it about Chris Mortensen.
Mortensen, yeah.
Delhomme having Tommy John and coming back with a stronger arm. Chase Daniel during the game was tweeting about like his UCL. I didn't see if Chase Daniel added on like what his recovery time on that thing was. But yeah, I mean, Niners quarterback.
I think Chase had the one. I think Chase had the one that just needed rehab and was like 4 to 6 weeks. Delhomme and Roethlisberger had the quote unquote Tommy John, right? Which is not pitchers, which usually knocks you out for 12 months, like a big time ACL injury. I think it is much shorter, 6 months, you're ready to go. But I started doing the math. It is January. It's January 29th. I mean, March 1, right? You just start doing March 1.
You're talking about 6 months out?
April, May, June, July, August 1st. It's 6 months.
Will Trey Lance be back by then?
Look like him and Jimmy were on the sideline.
I text everybody tickets, and I'm like, if Trey had not had a second surgery, would he have been back by now? And in the meantime, I was Googling, technically it was season ending. And he said, no, I don't think so. I mean, the stories had started to pick up that like Garoppolo would be healthy by the Super Bowl a few weeks ago,
When does this ever end? Like Andy, Mahomes gets hurt. It's like, he's either going to play or Andy's going to play. It's not like, do we have 7 other options? It's just like these two guys. It's like Burrow just out there laying on the line. Burrow just plays every game. Why are the Niners always thinking about 8 other quarterbacks? This is not normal. This is abnormal. There is a red flag here. There just is. This is not normal. It's just not.
I agree. Now, part of it is Jimmy gets hurt a lot, right?
Okay, remove Jimmy.
Yeah.
Trey Lance, shattered ankle, and Purdy
running.
One thing, listen, like he got a concussion. You'd be like, it's a freak. I wouldn't put that's a freak deal. If he just would have got slammed, concussion, that's happened. Tommy John?
Maybe.
You can't even make up the injuries. It's like, yeah, broken ankle. This guy broke his foot, plantar fasciitis or whatever. And this guy, Tommy John, it's just like serious injuries.
The craziest part of his Niners have been like as healthy as they'd been all in Kyle Shanahan's tenure for the last week up until the Elijah Mitchell injury.
Kinda. I mean, you got McCaffrey getting his calf worked on nonstop. Greg, I know, but Greg Olson's like, I don't even know if he could transition to quarterback because he couldn't plant off his calf. I believed him.
Yeah. McCaffrey quarterback.
If I told you that Christian McCaffrey would have to grab a helmet that had a green dot during the game because the 49ers had major quarterback issues, you would say the line minus 25 points for the Eagles probably isn't high enough. That happened. They handed him a green
trying to find his helmet. And they're like,
let's
bring the guy back who the Eagles have now seen on television, 700 clips of him unable to throw. Right? It'd be one thing if he'd gone into the tent, they didn't say anything. Like there's a world where Brock Purdy comes back into the game and the Eagles don't know maybe that he can't throw, but this was not that world. He was gone from the game too long. I guess context clues you can probably figure out. Well, Josh Johnson would not be in this game if Brock could throw. But it's pretty crazy to have a quarterback in the game that everybody knows can't throw. And then he said after the games he couldn't throw more than 10 or 5 yards.
Kittle said they had 6 defensive linemen on the field the entire time. 6. Now, Kyle had a good point. He said instead of just going wildcat every play, right, where you're running just trick plays that are not going to work when they know it's coming, that we could run a normal run game with him handing it off instead of doing McCaffrey use check crazy things, right?
Yeah.
You could just run your normal run game.
He threw the screen pass to McCaffrey. That play was going to work. And just 2 offensive linemen didn't block the tackler.
Wouldn't you say though you can't run screen pass after screen pass after screen pass because everyone
There's
would
two
just stay in
sides
the
of
line
the
of scrimmage?
field.
It
Bubble.
was
The problem is a bubble. You actually are throwing the ball probably,
farther than you
15
think,
yards to the sideline. The field's 52 yards wide. So if you're in the middle of the field or on one of the hashes, you want to throw it to the wide side of the field. I mean, it's a 25-yard throw. So actually, you can't, like all those behind the line of scrimmage throws that don't seem like long throws, they're actually long throws for a quarterback who can't throw 5 yards.
I feel like I earned some respect. Not that I didn't have respect for the guy, but just clearly he could not throw, but he was in a lot of pain. He stood there on the sideline. Like, feels like some other quarterbacks have gone back to the back and never be seen again. Like, I do appreciate a guy just standing there on the sideline and then even coming back in the game.
Yeah, and not, I think sometimes guys who feel like they have some obligation to prove they're hurt act, the facial expressions and like his face, for all we talked about, like his face did not change, which is part of the reason you're like, bro, are you sure you can't play? Because his face looked the same as after he throws a touchdown. But clearly,
do you think most people on their couches were like, what's going on? This is weird.
Oh, I think everybody was saying that.
Why does he look so normal?
I know. But it reminds you like when a baseball pitcher motions to the trainer and they come out and like, hey, man, you want to try and throw? And he like starts to throw. And then the other thing was, and he can't, when they would show Brock Purdy throwing on the sidelines, they never showed how far he was throwing the ball. It was just a close-up shot of him. So we had no sense of like, he's trying to throw, but how far is the ball traveling, right?
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
What are you grinning about?
Nothing. Just thinking about Purdy.
What we witnessed today. Do you think they would have won the game or could have won the, however you want to phrase it, if he plays 4 quarters just based off the 5.5, 6 plays we saw?
Well, I think it's impossible to take much from that because I think it's fair to just 100% say we got absolutely robbed. The 2 best teams in the NFC by a mile, the 2 best rosters, could have been a really freaking good game. I got no clue. Do I think the Niners would have won? I do. I put $2,000 on the 49ers to win the game. But, like, I can't take anything away from those. Like, the 6 plays, yeah, I think they would have moved. The Niners have star players. Jalen is clearly not himself. Or just, one, he's never been the most accurate guy, but his deep ball now's off. So they were primed because their quarterback is not a pinpoint passer right now with the shoulder messed up to be had if Purdy just played a solid game. I would say early on it looked like Purdy, before he got Tommy John, like actually looked much calmer today than he did last week, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. My answer to the question
we got robbed, guy, of a real game. In the NFC and AFC championship games, typically you get just good games, the best teams. We got nothing. We got, a valiant effort by the Niners in that first half, just the defense giving everything they had, and then eventually you just, what are you supposed to do?
My answer to the question is yes, they could have won the game with, like, yes, they were. And Philly could have beat them with Brock. Obviously, you don't know what's going to happen in the game, but if Brock Purdy were healthy, they absolutely could have won that game. And I guess what my real answer is, I was more confident after the game they could have beat Philly than before the game that they were going to beat Philly after watching Philly. Now, Philly might have adjusted their game plan offensively, knowing the 49ers really couldn't. At some point, they realized Niners can't score. There's no reason for us to really push the ball down the field, I thought, because Philly really stagnated. Wisnowski hit the punt down to the 5. The Niners defense was good. Philly had stopped pushing the ball down the field. It was weird. Then they started doing it again, and they didn't hit any. Mooney made multiple good plays. So he
overthrew AJ by a mile.
That was one that. But that's part of why. Yeah, that's a good. I'm glad you said that. That's part of why I felt that way. Is I don't, watching it happen, I thought the Niners defense, though it was ranked the number 1 defense in the league, and might have been the best defense in the league, I guess, was not. There are other levels of number 1 defenses, and they were not on the tier of, in the last 30 years, the best defenses we've seen that were number 1 defenses. That's how I felt coming into the game, and I thought they'd be susceptible to the Eagles' pass game. watching the game play out, and I got to allow for the possibility the Eagles did things differently, knowing they just didn't have to make mistakes and they should win the game.
Definitely in the second half when they started running the ball.
Yeah, definitely in the second half. But I came away feeling like, yeah, you know what? Actually, the Niners defense was going to, in an evenly matched game, was going to play better against that Philly pass game. Did not look, when the game was really in the balance, and everybody was still, kind of in the balance. That Philly pass game was not as much of the juggernaut as I expected it to be.
Totally agree. And the thing we'll never know is, like, what would the Niners passing game look like for a half? Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, Juwan against their DBs. First play of the game, what'd they do? Spread them out, said DB linebacker on George. No fucking chance you guys have.
Yeah.
And what George do? Immediate. Boom. Easy. Look, Ayuk. But then once he gets injured, it's just bleh, bleh. It's just nothing. It's not even, you never even show anybody that tape ever again, beside the new defensive coordinator here showing the guys next year what it's like to keep fighting, on his defensive players. Or DeMeco showing the Texans, this is what fight looks like.
Yeah. Well, he's got a second interview, John. The Texans really want him to prove it. Does Harbaugh have a second interview with the Broncos? Apparently he met with the Broncos.
I thought he said you can't out happy, and then he's had about 7 interviews with that Walmart guy. What's going on there?
Maybe they're just two titans of industry trying to connect on details of how
I can see Harbaugh being like, we're just two boats passing the night, just
yeah. The other thing that we would not have known, and you have to give the Eagles credit on the play that Purdy got hurt on, was Purdy just going to be under pressure all game? Josh Johnson comes in and almost fumbled on his first series because he got blasted by Reddick on second down. I think it was second, if not maybe third down. But that's one of the questions. Like, the Eagles would say that, like, hey man, if you guys had, if Niners had Brock and were dropping back all day, Hassan Reddick was going to be cutting it loose all night. And just because Croft might not have been on him again, McGlinchey might have been. So don't act like we weren't going to bring in the heat on, this idea that Brock definitely would have survived the next 4 quarters. That's what, if I were an Eagles fan, kind of countering the point, or, if you want to play devil's advocate for Philly, you have to be real with the possibility that they hurt the quarter. Like, part of hurting the quarterback on the first series is you got to the quarterback. The Niners did not get to Jalen Hurts in the same way that Philly was able to get to. They pressured him. They made plays break down. I thought they played a really good game defensively up front when that game was in the balance, but they didn't. You don't get to Jalen Hurts with that type of hit generally.
Well, early on in the game, when it felt like the game actually was a game, the 49ers were not rushing Jalen Hurts like they were rushing Purdy because he can run. Clearly, the game plan coming in, DeMeco, was the wide 9, fly up field, was actually like take 2 steps and stop. And that's what did they do? They forced Jalen to, like, we're going to make you throw, bro. We ain't just going to let you run around. And he was not having it. It's like, this game plan might work. But then when the Niners have no chance at scoring, it didn't even matter. That's what was sad. It was going to be these great players, X's and O's. See, I thought Olsen, said it pretty well because he's right. I mean, there are 4 head coaches in this game, right?
Yeah.
All the coordinators.
Yeah.
DeMeco, Kyle, Steichen, and I thought Gannon was going to be the Texans head coach. Maybe he's not. Maybe those guys actually are getting jobs. But, we didn't get any of that because it was kind of fascinating. The Niners were making Jalen throw. They were stopping. You're right, though. It's harder to get pressure on Lane Johnson for Nick Bosa than it is on Reddick on that side. Like, he was going to generate
Lane's
more
only
pressure.
torn his groin twice.
And in pain every single time he, jumps off sides. But
they give him he's basically it's like he's got the blue placard. That's why he gets to start half a second early.
Joey Bosa told those guys to go Snapchat their butt buddies.
Maybe that should have been the first indication that Joey was rattled pregame.
Joey was mad.
In a Niners jacket.
I saw Big Cat says, anytime you bust out within the first couple insults, I'm richer than you, is always he's in your dome. when he said, "How about your fines last week?" And he said, "I can pay him because I'm rich." Joey woke up on the wrong side of the bed or something, didn't he?
My question: why was everybody? Why were the Bosa's just all congregating where he was just an easy target? You know, like this guy. Let's get into the stadium.
I get he's not going to beat you up or whatever. These Philly fucking people are nuts. I mean, Joey Bosa's what, 6'4", 270? Like, that's not just the random guy you just openly feel comfortable blasting, is it?
Are you Snapchatting? No, I'm just filming you. So go ahead and take a shot at me.
Yeah, that guy was praying he'd hit him, then he'd get a couple million.
Joey in the if you're Dean Spanos, you're paying Joey like $100 million. How do you feel about him in a Niners jacket?
I do think not everyone's the Mannings where they just wear sport coats to their brothers. I mean, most people do what, I think it's more than fair.
All right. I don't have any big issue with
Joey did, potentially blow you a playoff game, but at least Brandon Staley picked up his helmet twice. You ever seen a coach pick up the player's helmet? The head coach?
What do you mean pick up his helmet? I don't remember that. What happened?
Joey slammed his helmet. Right?
Well, team. Yeah, you got it. I get it. Team leader.
Brandon grabbed his helmet. He's the head coach. I don't know if Belichick would have grabbed the helmet
after a penalty. Yeah, after you get the penalty.
You see Joey's girlfriend's shoes?
The huge, like the red.
She had on like the Lady Gaga's. Yeah.
It was like I went playoff shopping. All right, baby, get something powder blue. No, I'm getting red. For when we go see Nick. Did you think
they were in a suite? There's no way he was sitting in the stands with people, a bunch of Eagle fans around him, right?
There's no way. There's no way.
He would have. How edgy he was before the game even kicked off, he would have gotten a fight. And if he was in the stands, I will not be shocked if it does come out. He beat up some people. Can you just see him just taking out like 30-year-old Eagles fans talking shit, like banging their heads against each other,
yanking people off telephone poles,
just kicking everyone's ass?
They greased the telephone poles. It didn't work.
No, I saw they climbed up.
This is night of the game. I hope this doesn't come off as like glass half full, because it's not the intent. I'm just looking at all my notes from the game and kind of rattling through some of the things. Christian McCaffrey was a war daddy today. That touchdown he scored was, the
sweetest touchdown as a Niner by far.
Yeah, it's up there with some of the sweetest Debo touchdowns. Jennings kind of helped. It was an incredible touchdown run. He was really good.
Well, that's what made you think Reddick, Hargraves, Sweat, the defensive line was going to be a problem. Like, we knew that coming in. They have one of the better defensive lines. But it felt like all the other cats, if you could just get by them with Debo, with Ayuk, with Kittle, with him, there were plays to be made. Like, that's where the Niners were going to make plays on them. Their safeties and random linebackers that Trent Williams almost killed were not just going to tackle these guys every single play. Could Reddick,
linebacker,
Fletcher Cox,
like a nickel corner,
or the DB or whatever he was, could they have? For sure. The D-line was going to be a problem. Just like their O-line. Their O-line's legit. Their O-line and D-line are what they hang their franchise on. But it felt like all the other guys, like, I think the Niners, like, we can get after these guys, right? And once the quarterback got hurt, you just don't have a chance to. It's just like, it just becomes the D-line versus Josh Johnson, kind of, is what it felt like.
Yeah.
Which is, you're screwed. It doesn't become like an 11-on-11 game anymore. And that feeling, I just don't believe there's a feeling like this in sports. And it's like this in the regular season too, when a star quarterback or a legitimate starting quarterback, it could be Dak or Cousins, goes down. In baseball, in a playoff game, if my starter goes down, even if it's Verlander, if it's 1-1, like, I can get through I can win the game with a bunch of random bullpen guys. It happens all the time. In football, when the quarterback goes out, it just, especially in this situation, there's no other way to think like, This is just, what are we doing? This game's fake.
Are you saying there's no scenario, like, if you simulate the game 100 times with Josh Johnson playing quarterback,
Eagles win it 99.5 times out of 100?
I agree with you. Whether he fumbles or not at the end of the first half, how are you going to get through the next two quarters? But I would, the one counter would be, part of the sport is you putting pressure on a team for 4 quarters makes it harder than putting pressure on them for 2 quarters. And the Eagles, and it sounds like I'm saying if you ended up in a 7-7 game or a 10-7 game after 3 quarters somehow, you'd have to say there's a shot. I mean, you just would. Even though I'm with you, it's just how.
You're saying if he comes into the game in the fourth quarter?
No, although that's a good point too. I'm just saying, a game in which you don't turn it over at the end of the half, it's a tie game going to halftime. Even if you don't score right away to start the second half, which I cannot assume you were gonna. They didn't score the rest of the game. They got the ball to start the second half. They didn't score. If you're playing a game in which the Eagles are not up 2 scores and just feeling like we got this thing, by putting pressure on them, maybe you give yourself a better chance to win. That, a player under pressure is more likely to make a mistake than a player who's not.
Yeah, and you're right. You get credit as a team for knocking out the quarterback. That's a long-standing thought of what defensive coordinators tell their teams, and head coaches, their defensive guys, tell their team, "We're going to knock this fucker out." They don't
Especially
mean
like
it to,
this.
put him
when
in
you
the
get to when you get to him in the pocket, right?
Yeah, and you KO them. And honestly, they KO'd Josh as well. They were KOing these guys, KOing them. They did. Knocked them both out. Purdy was just not concussed, so he was able to come back in the game. He just couldn't throw.
Yeah, which is the sign of a team being overmatched. Their quarterbacks getting knocked out of the game, right?
Well, you could argue one thing's clear then. McGlinchey, who says he would, basically realizing he ain't coming back after the game. I watched some of his – he didn't give a press conference. He was talking to his locker. Reddick on that right side, unless they left Kittle in every single play to block, was going to cause a massive havoc, just like Parsons. I mean, they think how hard it was to win last week. It ain't Trent. I saw someone's like, Trent's this great offensive lineman. Why do quarterbacks keep getting hurt? It's like, hey, guys, this was some idiot on Twitter. It's like, it all happens on the other side. It's never Trent's guys coming unhinged, right? So it's the right side. Now, the big picture, there's no way to find some Lane Johnson on the street. It would just be Jalen Moore or some other random guy. But it is going to be a weakness. Their right tackle is going to be their worst offensive lineman. Because you can function even with, as we've seen, with a random center. Banks, Burford, Brunskill, that group is more than serviceable. There are so many good defensive linemen. And they just consistently, when you got Trent Williams, they're just going to, even if the guy naturally lines up a lot of times on the left, they're just going to put him over there. And that is just a big picture red flag for the 49ers. They're going to have to figure out a way to just be a little more compact over there in the passing game, because that is getting guys killed.
And we've talked about this. We haven't talked about it in a while, but innovation. You break the huddle. You make the defense line up first. Then you put Trent Williams, up against their best pass rusher.
You're saying he travels too?
Yeah, I'm saying Trent Williams travels.
Not opposed.
I'm just saying desperate times call for desperate measures. And he's a Hall of Fame type player. So,
who killed an eagle?
Grabbed him by the back of the show. I mean, grabbed him by the like when you grab when a dog's like a mama dog picks up the baby dog by the neck and just drops it somewhere else.
I don't understand. I would imagine 42 didn't quite realize Trent Williams treats Debo like a brother, like a member of his family. And they were kind of getting into it. They kind of followed, and you could see him seeing and walked over. At that time, he had nothing to lose. And you could tell, I didn't know that was going to be the end result, but something was, it's like, if this thing pops off, he's kind of, you could just sense. And do you know what was pretty impressive after Trent luckily didn't break 42's back? Did you see how fast Banks got in there too? These guys were not, they're all kind of a little group here. I don't know where McGlinchey was. I saw Jalen way over there. He's like, I'm not getting in this. I don't blame him. Trent slammed that dude hard.
Yeah, they had a lot of pent-up aggression, too. That was part of it, right? Shanahan was at the point where he was screaming, yelling about calls that were totally legitimate. He had it. Did you think the Buck Mason roughing the kicker, Kyle's argument was he was grabbed and thrown into him?
We didn't take the plant leg out, right?
He didn't take the plant leg out. As Pereira explained, it doesn't necessarily have to be the plant leg if You don't let the
You
guy
wipe the guy out.
if you wipe him out. He was, I tend to not like that call all the time because, like, on that play, there's a difference. On that play, he's making a legitimate play on the ball and was right there, right? He actually missed the ball. To me, it doesn't always make sense.
I think the punter last second kind of moved because he was right there almost. Because it looked like in slow motion, it's like he's blocking this, and it feels like the punter goes to the right side of his hand.
I think when it's weak is when it's like, if I had gotten a piece of the ball in the same play, it's not a penalty, but I don't get a piece of the ball right there. It's one thing when the ball's kind of gone and then you go flying to the kicker. On that play, he was there in time. The ball just, he missed the ball. It's hard you just put your arm out. You're not necessarily aiming. That's what I don't like that call. But
by that time, I was checked out. It didn't feel like it mattered.
Yeah, I mean, it was, what was it, 21-7 at that point in the game? Josh Johnson was already out of the game. So, and that drive, Hufanga gets the late hit on Hurts. I'm not going to tell you that's when you knew it was over because you knew. I mean, it was over before then. But what's great? Niners at halftime, 6 yards a carry. Philly 4 yards a carry. Hurts was 13-19 for 97. But
I've seen this a little in the chat, and I saw this on social media. And listen, this notion that Trent Williams like crossed the line, they were in a scuffle. I've seen a lot of Eagle fans like, that is fucking bullshit what he did. 42 got kicked out of the game too. He was grabbing Debo. You're going to get in scuffles in life, whether it's in football, whether it's in the streets. You better be prepared for better keep your head on a swivel. If he had grabbed a guy, like, remember Beverly took out Chris Paul, just an innocent dude standing there, it would have been Bush League, right? Just a guy standing there, he grabs, slams. That was not what happened. This dude's in the fucking whatever's going on, connected to Debo and getting in his face. You do that, like, you might get slammed.
You're saying we get in a bar fight, you bump the shoulder of a UFC fighter, he kicks your ass, you started the fight, you can't sue.
Or I'm standing there, I'm grabbing the UFC fighter, even if I don't really want the smoke, I'm trying to act like I do, fair game. If UFC fighters are connected and I'm just like, I'm trying to get out of this bar and somehow Chuck Liddell hits me in the face, that someone's getting sued, that's a disaster. What Trent Williams did to me is not that crazy. He got a guy in the scuffle and he taught the guy, big dogs eat little dogs, homie. Fucking hit the ground. If he had done that to some random Eagle who had nothing to do with it, it would have been ridiculous. That is not what happened. He came to the scuffle, and he's just the biggest dog on the, he gets to punish the guy.
Right.
Because he's
the
much
wrong
stronger.
guy entered the chat.
Yeah. But it's this notion that 42 is some innocent bystander, bullshit. He wanted to smoke, and he found out that it was pretty hot. He got burned. He's honestly lucky he got up.
Really one of the top 5 moments of the game for the Niners.
It was the best moment of the game.
Well, the McCaffrey run I would put at the top, I think.
That was cool, yeah. The Bosa almost sack was pretty sweet, too.
The Bosa end zone play. John, now we bring you the top 5 plays of the NFC Championship game for the 49ers. Drum roll, please. Yeah, can we come up with, here's the question. Can we come up with 5?
McCaffrey run, Bosa play.
Yep.
Fred just had a couple just fantastic plays. Fred
Warner's return from injury, Bosa's return from injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred was, how about I guess, Hurts bobbled it, but on that, I think it was going to a designed quarterback run anyway.
I think it was too. How about the McCaffrey throw 75 yards down the field to absolutely nobody?
Didn't take a sack.
Greenlaw's punches.
Oh, 3. I saw somebody tweet, like, if he's not left-handed, that's really impressive. Like, with your offhand to hit the ball 3 straight times with the punch.
I would doubt he's left-handed.
Why?
Do you think that's a fair penalty if you're hitting the ball?
I didn't think so at first, but then they show it like the play was over. The play was so over. I love that. I don't think Greenlaw knew he had screwed up. Like, I think Greenlaw thought it was a legitimate play.
Well, did you see him swinging live thinking that, like, is he going to get tossed out of this game? You
Yeah.
couldn't tell he's hitting the ball. And then slow motion, you're like, that is one of the most coordinated things. I thought today, I saw someone tweet Greenlaw's having a bad game. I thought he was all over the place. running down guys, flying around. I don't remember a Niner player since like Jimmy Ward over a couple year span just growing on me to go like, this guy's a legitimate starter. I want this guy in the trenches with me. A little crazy too.
Kind of want Jimmy Ward back.
Feels like he already knows he's gone.
Mooney Ward, PBU. Did you see Jimmy Ward when he found out that Devontae Smith's play should have been incomplete?
No, what'd he do?
He was like, "Oh, that should have been incomplete." This is in the huddle, like in the media scrum. He's like already dressed. He's like, "That should have been incomplete," and the holding call was bullshit. I had a pretty good game. He was fired up because that ball should have been incomplete, so it wasn't on him.
And this is the point. And listen, I think Jimmy's played well, but you get late in the season. I mean, Jimmy's kind of been openly talking about how he's going to be gone. Kind of a weird, it's part of the business.
I hadn't seen him in a while, and then I saw him back grinning tonight.
Him and both Jimmys had pretty big smiles all night.
I think first Jimmy smile was with Trey, who might have also been smiling.
I think you learn in like Little League, definitely in high school football. I remember working for Pat Hill. The sideline, when things are going really well and you're going to win, maybe you can start a little grab ass fun. Losing, I think that's something that's ingrained in all these guys at a pretty young age. Like, you do not want to be caught playing grab ass smiling when you look up and it's 28-7 and you got 3 quarterback injuries and you're one of the guys injured and you're making a ton of money and we've paid you $150 million. That I'm a fuck around guy sometimes. I like the bullshit. That's an awful look. That's an awful look, guy. It was a terrible. That was the worst look of the day.
I mean, if he hadn't played so much tough football for them, he'd probably be getting killed for it. If he wasn't a beloved teammate.
It's not a reflection of like his toughness or what he's done for the Niners. I'm just saying that look in that game on the road.
Oh, I know.
That can't happen, man. I don't blame him. Why does he care? He's not going to be on this team. He'll be long gone.
He's a New York Jet. What do you?
But that's just, come on, bro.
Yeah. What else you got in your notes there?
Well, once Josh Johnson got injured, they stopped. I would say, I mean, I kind of took it seriously up till 7-7, but once he fumbled, I mean, this is my notes, my game. Like I'm so dialed in, play out. I don't remember. It hasn't happened since 20, a game where I'm just like pacing around, dropping my pen. Like what is going on? I don't remember what is going on. This felt like it's probably like a preseason game, when we're not really kind of screwing around, not really focused, none of it really matters.
Yeah, or like a game where they're up. They've had a few games where they've been up, but I'm like, I'm not taking notes anymore.
But even then, you're watching the game, having a good time. This is one like it was a surreal 3-hour experience.
It was really
Kyle's faces, a lot of the faces. One thing why Jimmy pisses me off is because I can't imagine if I was Fred, if I was George, if I was Juszczyk, if I'm Trent, if I'm all these guys like in this war where we're not going to win. There is no chance. Portnoy had a great tweet. Like, this has to be the worst feeling as a fan where it's like, healthy, if things are right, like you could win a game, but you're watching a game where you got no shot. You got no shot. They're playing hard. Guys are still getting tackled. Guys are still kind of getting hurt. And you got grab ass going on the sideline. Like those two guys, I didn't really see Trey, but Jimmy definitely was smiling. Nobody's playing grab ass. I mean, Kyle is having an ulcer. You could see, like, you could constantly see visuals of like Anthony Lynn talking with Juszczyk and McCaffrey and like some other coach. Like, are they trying to like scheme up some running back pass? Everyone's just going, the ship's going down. We're going down with it, but we're going to go down with our fucking heads high because we're a bunch of war daddies. And I got Jimmy G, $150 million man, pulling with his Range Rover waiting for him back with a plane touchdown, smiling. Like, it's just, none of the other teams will care. But if I was his teammate, I'd be like, come on, man. That would piss me off. It pissed me off having to watch it. Like, Like, Jimmy, no one's smiling here. No one's smiling.
My list of stuff to be pissed off would be much longer than that if I was his teammate, I think.
I mean, there's a million things, but I'm just saying, like, that is just embarrassing look. Really is.
Yeah, I don't. Has he been away from them for a while? Because to me, it's kind of feels like how you.
Then it's kind of. Did they bring him today, hoping that maybe he could be healthy and be the backup quarterback for the Super Bowl? Kind of felt like that is what they're doing.
Yeah, maybe. Debo was the other guy. Debo had a run at the end of the game when the game was so over. That was just incredible. I mean, he lost 7 yards, but it was just another testament to, like, you know, not that today's the time.
Yeah, he was returning kickoffs.
I know. It's just, you understand why Kyle and John were just not going to do what the Titans did, which was, and AJ Brown. I mean, who wouldn't love to have AJ Brown? But I give Debo a lot of credit repeatedly. Not that Debo needs the credit. Debo gets plenty of credit, but I thought it was a pretty impressive performance by Debo today in a game that, nobody will ever look twice at it. 3 catches for 33 yards and 6 rushing attempts for -9 yards. The game in the Debo box score Hall of Fame will not get remembered.
I don't know if Ray got hurt or why Debo was back there, but it wouldn't shock me if Debo was like, put me back there. Maybe I'll take one of the house.
That's what it felt like. Yeah, I mean, right?
Maybe I'll get a touchdown. Because I thought the only way they could get touchdowns were defensive scores or punts or kicks to the house. That was the only way they were scoring. You do realize why, like, some of those all-time great defenses, the Ravens, the Bears, when the entire season their offense sucks, how frustrating that has to be for all their war daddies. Like, we can't score touchdowns. Some of those John Lynch Tampa Bay teams that had no offense. Can you imagine just having no offense, but being a good team? What that feels like for all the sweet Hall of Fame level players in your team? Like, how often just over breakfast when it's just 2 of them? Like, this is so ridiculous. Like, we're not asking for Peyton Manning here, but can we just score 18 points a game? When you can score like the Niners 7 points, and it was just like, if they get to 10, it's going to be a miracle.
Right.
That's the most deflating way to play the sport of football.
Not only is it going to be a miracle, like, they're going to have to do it in some weird. How are they going to put a drive together? They're not going to break any big plays. They're going to need like a pick 6, but the ball's not. There was one deflected ball over the middle. It was going to make the win against the Packers last year, blocked punt touchdown, feel like, I don't know, not a miracle. Whatever the opposite of a miracle is, just a ho-hum, run-of-the-mill play. Because at one point during his postgame, Kittle said, and he didn't mean it the way it sounded, I don't think. He just said, having 2 quarterbacks who can't throw, who are unavailable. I think he just meant, like, we went through 2 quarterbacks and we had no quarterbacks left. I don't think he meant it like Josh Johnson wasn't capable of throwing, but maybe he did. I don't know. And then he was asked, how do you remember how the question was worded? Like, how does it feel to lose a game with no quarterbacks or something like that?
I thought it was like, what does it feel to lose in the NFC Championship game?
I thought the question included the part of what happened without the quarterback. Because I think what that means is, like, you didn't have you came today and you didn't have a chance. I think that's the part that has to feel the worst. It's just you had no chance. You had no chance. After
they played the second half with just runs. Like I don't ever remember seeing that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's happened before in a wild card game when a quarterback went down and when we were younger. I don't remember in any recent memory a bowl game, a playoff game. Honestly, it doesn't happen very often in college or pro in football games, wouldn't you say? Where you get into a position where you can't throw?
Does it feel like more often you have a third person who can kind of play quarterback? I mean, some teams have 3 carry 3, some don't, but this is the argument, that people have made before, is like, just have a third quarterback eligible. And if he comes into the game, then the first quarterback is not allowed to come back in. It's a simple rule, right? That's the suggestion. It's like, just carry 3 quarterbacks. You don't ever end up in that spot. And if you ever use the emergency quarterback, I think it's called the emergency quarterback, then the first quarterback's just never allowed back. It's a very simple rule.
I'd argue if you're down to,
you travel players who aren't able to play anyway. You're not saving.
What would be the reasoning to not just have the third quarterback available whenever you needed him, not even like not be able to pull the guy back?
I don't know. You tell me. What are front office guys?
Well, I guess if it was like if it was a separate roster spot, you could manipulate it with another player, call a guy quarterback that was actually a skill guy, cover kicks and stuff. He had to play quarterback.
Let's see. What I would do is you just say it's the emergency quarterback is the third quarterback. If that person plays, the starting quarterback is no longer eligible. So you can't fuck around with the roster.
So you can't he's also covering kicks. It's like an extra Tevin Coleman Berg,
Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah. So that's fair. But guy, here's the thing: this doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. And again, who would that person have been? And how would that have saved them? Who would that guy have been? Josh Johnson was the backup. Who was the third stringer?
I don't know.
During the game, John, Kayvon Thibodeau tweeted, "Way this game look, we might be better than the Niners." Joe Staley said, "You're a flash player who gets bodied by average tackles. Don't let the New York media affect you too much." Maybe that's a top 5 Niner moment from the day.
I thought you were going to come. Oh, shit.
Where'd you go? Milkoff hit the table and knocked his camera wire loose. That's what just happened.
Shit.
I can hear you. Now he's gone. All right, he'll fix that. I don't know what he thought I was about to say. He just hit the table so hard that he rattled his camera wire loose. Then he yells shit. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast, he yells shit, disappears from view, and now he's back.
I thought you were gonna bring in Armstead's tweet that was like, "Bro, we just watched your film. You sorry or something."
I said that tonight.
Armstead quoted this tweet too, but this one's funnier. You're a flash player who gets bodied by average tackles. Like that's a pretty strong. That's a strong Joey Bosa shit talk. Honestly, he could have just left it at that one. Don't let the New York media affect you. I just wish you would again. You're a flash player who gets bodied by average tackles, which is so true. Kayvon, shut up. I saw Kayvon get into it, I think, with Micah Parsons. Like, Kayvon, we need to pump the brakes. Are you an all-rookie defensive end this year? Like, did you have a really good season? You had a couple good games, but the hype on you, like, are you going to have 10 sacks next year? Are you going to have 10 sacks next year? I don't blame. A lot of players are chirping, but he feels like he's Micah Parsons. I think his tweet to him was like, they got back and forth over something. He's like, Micah said that maybe Kayvon dropped, what are you doing this weekend, bro? He's like, just getting ready for the Pro Bowl, LOL. How about you?
That's a good comeback.
But it feels like, Kayvon's trying to talk with some of these big dogs. It's like, let's pee with the puppies before we run with the big cats. Let's just slow down a little.
LeBron has made him feel as though he is on tier 1, I think. LeBron had a good performance last night. Oscar winning performance. There was a comment here. Where did it just go? Here we go. CJ. Media needs to hold Shanahan accountable. This is insane at this point. 4 QBs isn't bad luck anymore. Kyle Shanahan has had now in his career. Now you got to play in big games to lose big games is one way to look at it. But he has had some of the most heartbreaking defeats. Now there are a lot of heartbreak. Zach Taylor's had heartbreaking defeats. Like when you lose big games, they're heartbreaking. But he plays in some of the weirdest freaking games that any of us have ever seen. NFC Championship game. Last year's NFC Championship game. Obviously his 28-3 Super Bowl was crazy.
OC.
But
Super Bowl that he was the head coach of.
Oh yeah, the Super Bowl. Thank you. That was number 1 on the list. It is number 1 because it's a Super Bowl. This was the weirdest thing I've ever witnessed. This NFC Championship game.
Is he the Eagles' Andy Reid right now?
I think it's the closest thing if you're looking for a comp in recent years, 20 years ago. I would say Andy went to more NFC Championship games.
But he's only been on the team. He's only been the head coach for 6 years.
Yeah, the other thing it felt like, and I don't know, you kind of got to Philly on the tail end of that, or I mean, not the tail end, during that, as it was ending, which I guess is the tail end. It felt like Andy had more losses that were the main criticism after the game was Andy. Whereas I think Jimmy's taken a lot of the flack. And Andy's it seemed like Andy's clock management got a lot of the heat. Although I think Donovan probably got a lot of heat.
For the most part, over his tenure, right? For the core of it, he had a Pro Bowl quarterback the majority of the time, right? He had a consistent answer at quarterback. Now, I think there were a couple years Donovan got hurt, but for the most part, most of those NFC Championship games were with Donovan McNabb. There has been a revolving door, right? Like, it's pretty easy to make excuses. Well, Kyle's had Jimmy. Well, now he's got Purdy. He drafted Lance. And it's like they haven't figured out the quarterback position. Yet they've had success, right? They went to the NFC Championship this year with a 7th-round player. They've gone before twice with Jimmy Garoppolo. They haven't even figured it out. Now, you could also say that's just a testament to, the team that him and John have built. It is a fantastic team. But until you figure out the quarterback position, even Jalen today,
just part of his job,
which I would say is the most important job, especially given that he's the play caller.
Yeah,
is like Jalen today, who's nowhere near as dominant as he was pre-injury, but he was still pretty serviceable, right? He still could make plays. He still kept a lot of plays with his legs. He was just very functionable. I thought he was, him relative to what the Niners were doing with Josh and then a guy that couldn't throw, it was night and day. So you just have to find a way where you can just count on a quarterback. And it feels like we're back kind of to square one, depending on the severity of this injury, of there are just quarterback questions. Are there no quarterback questions for Kyle? Can Kyle just come out if, Purdy turns out he didn't rip it? He's just going to need the classic rehab, rest. He's going to be okay. This happened to the other guys. He'll be ready by OTAs. He's just the starting quarterback.
You're saying
because that's where it was before we kicked off.
Right.
And then this happened. He doesn't need Tommy John. He just needs to play. Is he the lock starting quarterback OTAs?
Yes. If he's healthy, he's the lock starting quarterback OTAs.
Based on obviously the guys they have on their roster, but I'm just saying, is Kyle? This is the question. Is Kyle? Are we reading some rumors over the next month? They're sniffing around some stuff.
Well, Brady, John, is Jimmy going to be back? Right, all of those things. But before we talk about the future quarterback stuff of it, Kyle's now coached 6 seasons. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won 1 NFC Championship game. He's lost 2 NFC Championship games. Next year, the Niners will try to do, which has been something that's been very difficult for them, which is to be really good start to finish in back-to-back years. I started to say they haven't been good in back-to-back years, but they went to back-to-back NFC Championship games, although both years were very bizarre. And every team's seasons are, a little bit of roller coasters. The Niners have some of the biggest roller coasters the land has ever seen. But what is he? Is he one of the best coaches in the NFL? Because that's what I thought about him before the NFC Championship game. That's what I felt about him for a while. And I still feel that way. Is he flawed? Yeah, every coach is, but I don't hit the offseason for the Niners thinking that Kyle Shanahan isn't one of the best coaches in the league. That's how I feel about it.
Well, I don't even need to see their offseason. They're going to be a preseason favorite to win, the Super Bowl. They're going to be their over-under probably be 10.5. People are going to view them as a playoff really good team. Despite, what happens at right tackle, what happens with Jimmy Ward, it'll be new pieces. But the core guys all coming back. We'll see the quarterbacks. Purdy and Trey are they're under contract, so they can't go anywhere. They'll probably add a veteran quarterback. Whether they add Tom Brady or whether it's Andy Dalton, it doesn't matter. Obviously, if Tom Brady was signed, they would be, a lot of people pick them to win the NFC, I guess. But regardless, Kyle Shanahan is viewed as a guy every year people think his team's going to the playoffs, right? It was like that 2 years ago. It definitely was like that this year, and it'll be like that against next year. So that's a really good place to be in. They have a position where I'd say universally around the league, people think he's a good coach. I'm sure we'll get into it later this week once it becomes official. He's hit 2 home runs at defensive coordinators. I'd say a solid home run with Saleh. He had a grand slam with D'Amico. Like, D'Amico's a star. And you don't keep stars forever. Andy had stars, they leave you. That's part of the business. Unless you're Eric Bieniemy and you're the offensive coordinator, you're interviewing for other offensive coordinator jobs. Very bizarre. I had a couple people DM me like, hey, man, I'm a Chiefs fan. I don't quite understand this. I'm like, yeah, no one really does. I think it's just pretty clear the Chiefs want him to go. But that's a whole nother conversation. He has to. Who's going to be the next defensive coordinator? You see,
for people that aren't following, Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs and is interviewing for other offensive coordinator jobs.
countless.
I guess you could argue maybe the only way to become a head coach is to prove to people I'm the OC by not being Andy's OC.
Maybe
Could make that argument, but anyway.
I think most people just stay with Bill, stay with Andy, stay with Kyle, and then you become a head coach.
Right.
But losing D'Amico, did I see this morning or was I dreaming? Did Vic Fangio, is he Mike McDaniel's defensive coordinator?
Good question on did you see it or were you dreaming? It was reported that he did take the Dolphins job. Then somebody said, I talked to Vic. He hasn't taken that job. Then somebody else reported, yes, he has. So I don't think the Dolphins have announced it. I'll hold on, double check.
Yeah, I didn't see it for the Dolphins. I saw it like it was one of those.
Pelissero said agreed to terms.
Tom Pelissero tweeted. Okay. So he's off the market. Who is going to be his next defensive coordinator? Because you would say over their 4-year run now, right? Even 2020, when they had all the quarterback injuries, their defense that year was good. So for 4 straight years, their defense has been really good. And they've had 2 defensive coordinators become head coaches in an offensive league. Who's going to be his defensive coordinator? Because last time with D'Amico, he gets credit for this because he hired him originally, but like it was kind of an easy choice for Kyle, I think. I don't know if they have an easy choice on the staff. Do they hire outside the building? Kind of feels like they might have to. They haven't had to do that with these other 2 guys. He hasn't really had to do that, with his other little minions. He obviously added, Anthony Lynn and Greasy and some of those guys, but he kind of knew them all. So is he going to hire a guy that he knows? Would he hire like Hackett's guy, the UC Davis defensive coordinator? I can't say his name correctly off the top of my head. Yeah, Giro. Yeah. Like, to me, I'd be all over that guy. And I would imagine Kyle has been talking to guys the last couple of weeks when D'Amico's telling you, I'm going to leave. Like, it's not like he's coming to this blind starting tomorrow, but whoever that name, the 49ers have named so-and-so to be their defensive coordinator is a massive moment just in his career. Because you just look back at Andy and Belichick, guys that sustained success. They're always going through different coordinators. And for the most part, it's like, oh, that guy was good. That guy was good. That guy was solid. This guy was another upgrade. It's like not every guy is just a star.
Right. And it might be that, depending on what happens with the Broncos, maybe he just stays to be their defensive coordinator. He might not be available, but that's a good pick. Feels like Chris Kasarik as the defensive line coach is the right fit. He could go former player Daryl Tapp's been coaching for several years. He's on the staff.
He's also a D-line.
Yeah.
Man.
So I don't know. It does feel like he'd have to go outside. It's another, one thing with Shanahan, and I don't know if it felt like this with Andy, but one thing with Kyle is like every offseason, it's just there's big decisions to make every offseason. I saw somebody say in the chat, like, are you serious? Are you really going to go play QB? I don't know what it was.
Roulette?
Yeah, some version, maybe QB roulette all over again. It's like, well, these their options are Purdy, probably off an injury. Jimmy's a free agent. Lance off an injury. Lance off an injury. Free agent Tom Brady. I mean, really, those are your options. You're not acquiring Aaron Rodgers in a trade. That's not happening. The Packers aren't trading you Aaron Rodgers, right? Free agent Derek Carr, like you're not. But the options are the guys that we've seen. But the options are there. These guys and Tom Brady. Those are the options. That's their offseason.
The Packers, Schefter's already said they're trading him in the AFC as they should. But even if they were like, we'll trade whoever's the highest bidder, the Niners don't even have a first or second round pick. So even if they would like,
you'd have to trade Nick Bosa.
Yeah, who's about to get an enormous amount of money, right? That's another thing this offseason. So it's just, but this is the maturation of running an when you are successful every offseason, for the most part, you're losing a guy. Like Ask
But that's the
Belichick.
point of a franchise quarterback is you don't have to do that thing every offseason, right?
Yeah. I mean, Purdy, I think the key is going to be with Purdy, this MRI the next 24, 48 hours. Because I would say if he needs Tommy John, that's a pretty big whoa. Like, hopefully he's ready. Like, Tommy John, hopefully he's ready for the start of training camp. I mean, I'm
prepared for that, right? Aren't you? Couldn't throw.
Because the one thing with getting hurt this late, I started doing the months on the couch, thinking, training camp's like 9 months away. John, it's February 1st. You're actually not that far away. OTA start around the draft. The draft is 2 months away.
Super Bowl's going on right now,
I guess, or 60 days away. 65. February's a short month. February, March, I guess the end of April, so 3. But you start practicing before the draft, right? Guys come in.
You also have your team. If Brock Purdy's your quarterback and you feel good about it, he played like 3 months of football. No, 2
not
months
even
of football. He played 2 months of football, basically.
If the injury is the injury, with Tommy John.
Well, no, but I'm saying is like he played 2 months of football. The offseason is important to him.
Yeah.
So even if he's ready to roll a month before the season starts, that's not, ideal.
Would you take a quarterback with one of your third-round picks?
No. I don't think I would. 7th round pick, maybe. I don't think I wouldn't. No, I would not. Because I've got two guys that when they're I've got a starter and a backup when they're healthy.
With a broken foot and a Tommy John.
Yeah, neither one will be healthy at the time of the draft. Well, Trey might be. If he's got Tommy John, obviously Brock's not. So what does this change? Like, what does this change?
Is Trey alive?
What do you mean Trey alive? Trey's alive.
No, I'm saying the Trey's repping all the first. It's just.
What does this do for 23? If he has significant elbow surgery, let's just say that. Does that mean
yes,
Trey Lance is back in the mix to be the starting quarterback, even if Brock is healthy by the time the season comes?
I would say no, but he gets the entire offseason. I mean, because Brock wouldn't. I think Brock would be the starting quarterback if healthy, if August 1st he was ready to roll, you'd think. I do not expect Brady to come, and honestly, I don't even expect them to be interested in Brady. Brady does not fit this offense. Brady can't move. He does not fit the offense. Do you agree with that? He can't move.
Yeah, they would have to change for him.
You think Kyle's going to change for him with his group of guys?
He
should have 4 years ago. I would not do it now.
Yeah, I mean, again, part of this is like, you got to sit down and go, what are my options here? And the doc goes, all right, well, Brock will be back September 1. And Trey, Trey will be back, June, ready to roll. He'll be cleared. And Kyle's like, so it's Trey, it's healthy Trey versus Tom. And so my options are change my offense for Trey, which I've already done. I got that playbook because I watched Trey and Brock. Brock didn't use Trey's playbook. Brock used Jimmy's playbook, right? Pretty clear. Trey and Jimmy and Brock,
different playbooks, yeah.
Different playbooks. So, like, I think I do, even though I fundamentally agree with you, I do think that's got to be part of the thought process. It's like, well, do I want to change it for Tom or hold my breath that Brock's going to be back and ready to roll? Or we'll just try the Trey thing again. We felt okay enough about Trey. And I do think I am with you. I think they're going to roll with Trey and Brock because I think they believe in Brock. So worst case scenario, we'll try the thing we tried with Trey until Brock's ready. It's not the worst thing in the world that the quarterback you took third overall has some more time to play and develop.
Yeah. And plus they're on the hook for the signing bonus. You might as well just roll it out. Like, right. You might, it behooves you to just write out the 4 years of his contract.
Every end of the season is like, wow, what's the offseason going to be like? And the Niners just find incredible storylines for the offseason with their quarterbacks.
Because it's always the quarterback. It's the quarterback. It's not the right, like at the end of the day, McGlinchey might be gone. No one actually cares. It's the quarterback.
I
And a
think
quarterback, I mean, just to have these injuries and free agencies, and it's like, oh my God.
just like predicting what, April, May will be like. I think the story is if Brock is, I'm saying this under the assumption that Brock is going to end up having significant surgery. When Brock is healthy, does he just get to be the starting quarterback again?
Yes. If it's just him and Trey, yes.
Yeah, if it's just him and Trey.
He's earned that for sure.
I agree.
Fred said after the game, did you watch any of Brock after the game?
I did. I watched all of Brock after the game.
When he's like, I feel awful, he started listening to the names.
Yeah.
Then Fred, for the vets, and he started with Fred, and Fred says he doesn't need to apologize to us. We wouldn't be here without him. And this is where I think people watching this, maybe not, but just overall, like, have a misconception of how much better Purdy was than Jimmy Garoppolo and how much success they had with Jimmy Garoppolo. And Purdy was on a completely different level. So I think when Fred's saying that, it's like, Brock Purdy was fucking good for us. He made plays. We're a team full of playmakers. And a lot of times Jimmy wasn't a big playmaker, but he was smart enough. He just made it kind of enough. This guy was on a completely different level. And he was in a different universe than never forget, the vets wanted Jimmy Garoppolo, not the other quarterback that they drafted 3 overall because he wasn't as good. And Brock Purdy's way better than that guy. So, based on that trio, Brock Purdy's the best of the trio. It's not even arguable.
These guys have all played a lot of football, and they've seen what happens when backup quarterbacks come into games. We've all watched a lot of football. We've seen what happens when the backup comes into the game. 8 times out of 10, when the backup comes into the game, it looks like it looked with Josh Johnson, who's been a pro for 14 years. He was drafted in the 5th round of the 2008 draft. He played for Jim Harbaugh at San Diego, right? So he's been around a long time. He's been on 14 teams. He's gotten a lot. People like him, clearly. He must be smart, clearly, right? Like, you don't last that long, even if it's 14 teams, if you're not a good person and bright and sharp and whatever, and have a basic ability. But that's usually what it looks like. And I did think that during the game, like, God, I think watching the Eagle game really highlights when we're trying to debate over the last 2 months, like, how good is Brock really? Well, look at what happens when most backups come into the game. It looks like what it looked like with Josh Johnson. That's usually maybe it looked a little worse. Maybe it usually looks a little better than that or better than that. But it's usually much closer to what it looked like with Josh Johnson than what it's looked like with Brock. And it just slaps you in the face like, Brock Purdy looks like a starting. He plays like a starting. He is a starting quarterback. The 49ers starting quarterback got hurt. Their next season's starting quarterback is going to be coming off of an injury.
If Josh Johnson,
I think that's what those guys recognize. It's like, it doesn't, like, guys, we've seen backups. It doesn't usually look like Brock.
For sure. And Josh Johnson had been the quarterback over those 7 games and not Brock Purdy. The 49ers are not playing in this game. Obviously, their coaching and front office knows that, but the players know that. One thing you would say about the 49ers players, would you agree? Extremely high IQ guys. They're core guys.
Yeah.
Understanding, like, what's good, what's not good, respecting good players. They just get it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, like, the top 10 core guys. Like, they get it. And I think they know because they saw it. I mean, they kind of sniffed it out with Trey, like, guys, we got a problem. And it was the elephant in the room in training camp, and you and I were going to these practices. It was the elephant in the room. But everyone trying to be positive. But these guys all had this game on their mind. Like, this is what we're shooting for, to get to the Final Four, get to the Super Bowl. It's not about, like, being the Lions, taking a step. Like, we're trying to fucking win double-digit games and make hay come January. And, like, we don't see which way. Honestly, I don't even think they think Jimmy's some star. They just know that, like, let us carry the thing. Yes. We can get there.
Yeah.
And then they saw Brock is like, God, this is what actually happens when you get contributions from a quarterback. 16 touchdowns over 7 games. Sky's the limit. And that's why I think you saw in their faces after the game such like they had seen a ghost because they didn't even get a shot. They're like, this doesn't feel fair. And I think most of them said what all of us say in any line of work, in anything in our life. Life sucks. Life cannot be fair at times, whether it's stuff that happens to your family, stuff that you see on TV, kids, anything. Like, life is very, very unfair. sports are no different. And that was what felt like a very unfair moment for people that felt like we were worthy of being here. And it just goes because this freak injury. But the problem is, back to you, what you're saying, Brock Purdy's way better than Josh. Like, how serious is his injury? Is it, if it is really serious, like that does throw a wrench in your plans a little bit.
Because we've seen it with the Niners repeatedly. Jimmy was hurt and didn't come back as quickly as Jimmy needed like a surgery later. Trey got surgery and needed a second surgery after the fact. So you can't assume once you're going to go under the knife that everything's going to go smoothly, that it's going to go perfectly. We've seen enough pitchers, if it's Tommy John, we've seen enough pitchers that, some guys come back, their arm is stronger. 6 months later, they're ready to roll. Some guys need a second surgery. So
100%. What if it's like, we hope to have him ready for week 1 of the season? Is he good enough to just miss the entire offseason and just, it's hard.
I mean, yeah, I think he's good enough to, based on what we just saw him do, right? I have a little more confidence in him.
When I say good enough, but like if he's not able to do anything in the offseason, you get worse when you're not able to do stuff.
Yeah. You have new players around you, maybe, right at that point.
Most of the core offensive skill guys feel like, right? McCaffrey, Mitchell's 3 games a year, Jennings, Debo, Ayuk all back.
Mitchell missed 2 games in 3 seasons in college. In years, like his first year, he didn't play that much, but where was it? 3 games that I texted you? 3 games in 3 years? I think it was 2 games.
Whatever it was a small amount.
It was 2 games in 3 years. He becomes a 49er. And like what happens is when you walk into the building, into the running back room, you walk through this door and there's an invisible just kind of coating, and it removes all of your ability to fend off injury. And you just
durability goes. If it was a video game, if you're like a 93, the moment you walk through, you're immediately 50.
Yeah, it's like it saps you. You go into a realm where all your superpowers are sapped. Like Batman without the ability to, or I guess he doesn't have a superpower. Superman without the ability to fly. It's crazy. But
Batman's superpower is Alfred.
Here's the one thing I'll say for what's that?
Is Alfred.
Oh, Alfred.
He's always helping him out.
The car. One thing I will say for Brock, and you saw this too, and in fairness to Josh Johnson, he hadn't been on the team all year, but has he been on a Shanahan team before? He's
definitely played for one of the guys.
They were getting delayed games like crazy once he came into the game. So the one good thing with Brock, if he has to miss a lot of the offseason, I know he knows the playbook like the back of his hand already, or pretty close to it, right? It's not like, well, Brock needs him, now this offseason he'll be able to get in the playbook. We'll be able to run more plays for him. He runs a pretty smooth operation. The play clock would get low on them sometimes, but when Josh Johnson came into the game, it was a constant play. I couldn't even get mad at 13. No, I'm not mad at Josh Johnson. He couldn't hear as he kept, and the play. Honestly, my thought was, Kyle, this is where your long ass play calls really hurt. It's loud and there's not a lot of time, and this guy hasn't played before.
And they know you're screwed, and it's just there was the one time where he got to delay a game. Might have been the first or second time. The whole huddle looked to the sideline like, Kyle, we don't have it. He doesn't have it. And I wonder what starts crossing your mind. Like, if you're listening to this and you've ever worked with someone, you want to like him, and he just has no clue what's going on or just completely over his head. In most businesses, right, it's like you have time to teach them. It's like whatever. Can you imagine being
in
that
leave
situation?
Behind, right? You can just hey, we'll take over this part of it.
Yeah. Or you got time to learn this. Don't worry. You're in the middle of the NFC Championship game, and if you're George or Trent, you're like, it's not like I can start yelling at this guy. That's not going to do no good. We're screwed. We are screwed.
Yeah. But it's pretty crazy.
You try to stay upbeat,
Then Kittle was trying.
Kittle did once Brock came back in the game. It felt like they felt in a weird way better with Brock that couldn't throw came back in the game.
Which is
they did not like Josh in the game.
No, they didn't. But they were worse. I mean, like him or not, like they were worse with Brock in the game than Josh Johnson. Josh Johnson completed balls. He did. He threw a couple balls. No one's going to give him his credit. He darted a few throws that I thought, like, you know what, man, that's pretty impressive.
Guy, you don't play for 18 teams in 15 years without having some talent.
Without being able to make some practice throws. John, after Eric Armstead tweeted, "Don't do that, bro. I watched y'all film at Kayvon Thibodeau." Kayvon tweeted, "We all watching the Super Bowl from the couch." Laughing emoji. Okay.
Yeah, man. It's just I would just leave these guys alone. You get bodied by average tackles is one of the great lines of all time.
You're a flash player who gets bodied by average tackles.
In fairness, I think that's a decent description of the guy, right? For a guy that has been anointed a little bit. I don't know if this is like the Kayvon Love podcast because it's probably the opposite, but
No.
and he is talented. Other thing is, I follow some players, but a lot of them just get retreated. I enjoy guys watching football at their house, like taking it in. You know, Julio Jones famously said, like, I don't watch football. I hate football.
Yeah.
I'm good at it. Like
Micah Parsons is like my favorite active player.
he never stops.
And I disagree with some of his takes, but it's fine because you can tell that he's not taking his takes too seriously.
No.
So he's just tweeting some takes. Somebody said that Kayvon asked Joe Staley who he is. I don't like, who are you? Yeah, I thought student of the game, I thought.
Kayvon.
So he doesn't know who Staley is. He doesn't know who Jeff Saturday is.
He said that despite Alabama winning all those national championships, he made the right decision.
Yeah,
I'm screwing that up.
He can pick up the phone, and he put Klatt in a really tough situation that night with that comment.
That's an all-timer.
You got anything else in the notes there?
No.
From early in the game on the old Niners? Other than the craziest thing you've ever seen?
Let's just let this thing simmer.
All right. Did I see Super Bowl line out yet? Did I see Eagles?
I saw someone in the chat say that the Eagles are favored.
Eagles are favored by 2. I would like to take the Chiefs plus 2.5. Plus 2 is what I'm seeing right now. I did feel before the game like there's just a little, and again, the Bengals were in a position to win. Just a lot of just Bengals love for a game that's going to be 17 degrees at kickoff in KC. Did you see Gronk call it the loudest stadium he's ever played in?
Kansas City?
Yeah.
No. He wasn't.
He was on the Fox. He was on the Fox
yeah.
show.
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't on CBS.
They were asking about Kansas City. He said it's the loudest place.
It's the loudest place ever played.
You see how cold when they came to the halftime of like Boomer and Phil and those guys? I mean, they were wearing triple beanies. It looked kind of cold in Philly, but they could wear like normal coats. They look normal. They come to Philly. It's like you couldn't tell Boomer or Phil which one was which because they were covered. That looks so cold, man. It had to be probably just like 13, where it's just frigid.
You know what's crazy? I checked in the second half. It said it was 17 degrees, which made no sense because it was like 17 at kickoff. And then, it gets colder. The sun goes down. It's been 2 hours. So I didn't quite understand.
Did you agree when you saw their booth with the guys on the sideline, how cold they were?
Sims has you realize he's got like blonde eyebrows. So he's got the beanie on and just like his eyebrows are frozen off his face.
That was hilarious. I think now it's been a long time. And Andy, I would imagine over these last 10 years, has made a boatload of money. And he's had a boatload of success. This is his 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years. They've been kicking ass and taking names. He is in football heaven with his quarterback. They are. He's a competitive. Obviously, football coaches are competitive. He is playing the team that he had a lot of success with, became very famous, and also paid him a lot of money. They did fire him. Now it's several coaches removed from the guy that replaced him.
How could you not?
Several coaches.
If the people that fired you are still there, how do you not still think about it?
Yeah.
It's one thing if it's just the logo.
I think it would be pretty good. Like if you Andy, I'm sure would have said if this would have gone right in this game, we could have been to 6 Super Bowls in my career instead of just this is my 3rd, right? Or I guess fourth in his career because he went one with the Eagles, this third with the Chiefs. So potentially a couple other bounces in some of those Eagles games, maybe he'd been to 6 or 7 total. If you are going to get to another Super Bowl, and then if he wins this game, to have his 2 Super Bowl victories, one in a crazy comeback fashion against the 13-3 dominant 49er team, and then beat the Eagles, who are having one of the greatest seasons in franchise history, after they had fired you, that's a pretty good couple Super Bowls on the resume, isn't it?
I would say so. And I would also say, that the other guys don't want to lose to you. Not Sirianni, he doesn't care. But that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman don't want to lose to you. Like that, even if you have no ill will, just on a competitiveness level, you don't want them to have that. You don't want to give them the satisfaction of beating you.
It feels more right, even though they're banged up. I mean, Mahomes, what would you put his percentage at?
It's tough because he threw
not his arm's fine.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, what am I going to say? He's 60%. That touchdown he threw to MVS from was sweet. Just a laser beam. Because I saw somebody tweet that it's just a PBU for most quarterbacks. The ball doesn't get there that fast. But it felt like his leg was at 20%, 30%. He ran once, right?
Yeah, I think it was only at the end of the game when he got shoved. I was going to go a little higher, 50, but yeah, I bet when you factor in he can't really move beside kind of gimp around. Now, it does look like he's pretty comfortable kind of doing the gimp around, like he's already got a pretty good feel for it. Little harder. Now, the Bengals defense, Reddick is catching you, but he does have 2 weeks to get right. It'd be a pretty legendary it just feels like Andy and Mahomes. Again, Mahomes is injured. If he was healthy, they deserve to be the Super Bowl champs, not like what I watched over that Philadelphia Eagle team today.
No, and that's why and Philly could beat him definitely, but I came away, and I had a buddy tell me this who played in the league, I don't know, probably week 11, somewhere in that range. He's like, hey man, I've watched Philadelphia. I think he was listening. Maybe we talked about it or something made him say it. He just texted me. He's like, I've watched Philadelphia. I don't get what everyone's they're not that great. Now, that's not what I'm saying today. They're in the Super Bowl. They just beat the 49ers. But I think the Chiefs are just a little more real. If you told me Nick Sirianni's not coaching the Eagles in 3 years, I'd believe that.
Yeah.
That just kind of goes sour, or they replace him with the OC or the DC or something like that. He clearly is good. But them running Jalen Hurts into the game gave me some real McCarthy vibes. What are you doing? You're up multiple scores against a team that cannot function offensively. Your quarterback is currently nursing a shoulder injury. Why is he running the football 2 weeks before the Super Bowl?
Well, their run game is Oklahoma, guy. Their run plays are just that kind of give thing.
That's fine. It was whatever it was, 20. Not then.
I
then.
Agree, but
it to me had some McCarthy, just what? Why the fuck are you guys running Jalen Hurts right now? They didn't. It wasn't 7-7. It's 21-7. Niners could not function. They were on Brock, and they're icing the game with Jalen running. Why? That's
the Steichen's the offensive coordinator.
Watching them do that to me was that's you do not deserve to. If those are the decisions you make, you do not deserve to beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Not when Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Hufanga, Jimmy Ward, they could hit this guy.
And they're pissed. And it happened. He got hit before Hufanga hit him late out of bounds. Jalen broke off some sweet run. He got a first down. And they Jalen took a big hit here, and they show the replay. He gets hit once, he gets hit twice. They didn't stay for the third replay, which maybe was Hufanga. It was helmet to his lower back, and he got up you could tell he was not feeling good. And they run him again. And then, of course, Hufanga tries to throw him into into the bottom of the camera well or something. It just made the Niners look frustrated on defense. Guys, what are you doing? It just felt like malpractice to me, but at least we got Patrick Mahomes today, John, who threw on one leg for 326 yards. It was just incredible. 2 touchdowns, no picks. Burrow's.
I thought both the quarterbacks pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow's threw 2 picks. The second one, you could argue, is not really his fault, except he did throw into double coverage. So the T. Higgins touchdown was incredible.
You know that both that guy that tipped it and the guy that caught it were rookies, and obviously Watson, who had the other pick, was a rookie. I mean, I don't know what Veach is doing, but he's landed sweet dudes all over the place.
I didn't realize all 3 of those guys. I mean, I knew Jalen Watson.
That's what I thought they said on the broadcast. Obviously, Watson, 35, is the rookie, the Washington State guy that was a USC transfer, who's just good.
Did
right?
McDuffie
the ball? No, who's also a rookie. It was 6.
Who's Jay Williams?
I don't know. It doesn't make sense because that means they'd have 4 defensive backs that are all rookies. Like, is this the greatest rookie class of all time? Who's 23 on the Chiefs?
Joshua Williams, who is a rookie, 4th-round pick from Fayetteville State.
I think number 6 on the Chiefs, Brian Cook. Who's Brian Cook?
Brian Cook.
A rookie?
Is a rookie from Cincinnati.
So they have
4 rookies in their secondary.
One thing you notice when you watch them, they got a lot of young talent. Pacheco's young. I mean, MVS is a younger. Yeah, that guy's sweet. Juju's hurt. Sky Moore, who had to play, I would imagine in a couple years will be
return.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Chiefs draft pretty well.
Honestly, we actually talked about Sky Moore the other day being a disappointment. Without his return at the end of the game, they might not get that game-winning field goal.
The punter, if you saw, like got rid of it really quick because I don't think he wanted to get it blocked, and it was like a low liner, a little like Tom Coughlin and what's Matt Dodge style, because it got to Sky Moore because they had mentioned, Sky had muffed a couple punts early in the season and got yanked. Well, obviously he had to go back there because of injuries. So right when they said that and he's punting, I'm like, but no one was even close, and he had a bunch of green grass. I thought that was the second best win of Andy's Kansas City career. Obviously, the Super Bowl is hard to beat, but when you factor in his quarterback's hurt, Juju's hurt, Tony, the dude they traded for from the Giants, he got hurt. He was missing his receivers. Sky Moore's not supposed to play. You could tell Pacheco's kind of limping around out there. Kyle's guy, what's the running back's name that Andy's? Yeah, I mean, they're just kind of dependent. They're like quadruple teaming 87. It's just I'm watching that game when it's tied 2020. Like, how's Kansas City going to move the ball? And they just found a way.
Well, that's
what shows you, though, if you do it long enough. Like, Andy has lost that game in his career. He's lost that game. Right. And you just do it long enough, you're going to come out on the other end of the game. He has lost, maybe not like Kyle, but he's lost the game tight like that, which hurts. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt when you lose the game tight, but at least you enjoy the whole game. Like, we got a chance to win.
That was part of it. There was no enjoyment. My buddy Pat just sent me a text. There's a Reddit from Reddit. Oh, it's a link to there's a doctor on YouTube, Brian Sutterer. He's got 690,000 subs. I think he does like sports videos. He claims that Brock he's going to need Tommy John. I haven't watched the video. Looks like he reads his lips when he says to Kyle, "I can't throw." 59,000 other people have watched this video in the last 4 hours, though, and so all those people have the information. But you can go check out that video, see his breakdown. Jackson on the stream says he just watched it.
Well, we'll react to it in the next 24 hours when we find out if he needs Tommy John.
I wrote down here, blame the refs, question mark.
I can't even talk about it. Let's talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
Let's see. I just want to make sure I didn't. I think we got to work on our top 5 lists, and we got 2 weeks. We got a week to the Pro Bowl, so Christmas for all the Trey Lance fans. I wouldn't get too excited yet. I wouldn't either excited yet. All right, y'all. As always, thank you for hanging. We continue on. We expect to be back with this. It sounds like you expect to be back with a stream on Monday, John.
Monday?
I expect there'll be some Brock news. Is that what you said earlier, a second ago?
I'm not even thinking straight if I
Okay,
did. Yeah.
we're not promising
I mean,
anything.
if he needs Tommy John, I mean, yeah.
When there's news, we'll be back. We'll be back soon, and a lot still to talk about. So keep sending us your takes. We appreciate that. And Brian,
my
Sutter is
my
batting
guess is
off.
my guess is whenever the MRI, he'll go for a second opinion. Isn't that usually the way it works in baseball?
To Dr. James Andrews, or
Well, I'm just saying, like,
Frank
if
Jobe.
they say you need Tommy John, he'll like, we just wants to go to a couple other doctors. You think just if he needs Tommy John, he's like, yeah, I'll just take Tommy John.
Dr. Neil Elatrash.
It doesn't feel like the first guy's just getting a lock. He's getting Tommy John, even if the guy tells him Tommy John.
Well, here's the thing. Dr. Frank Jobe is no longer with us. I expect it. Well, he gets an MRI, right? Then he gets the MRI. Then he probably goes to see like James Andrews, right? Is it James that does all the Tommy John?
James retired, I think.
Who does all the Tommy John surgeries?
I think James used to, but they might have got a new guy. I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow.
Anyway, like that's what I would expect, right? He gets the MRI, then he goes to see the expert. And yeah. All right. We're shutting it down for the night. Thanks for hanging with us, everybody.
We did great reporting.
We did do great reporting. Thank you, Alien DGen, for the $10. Later, y'all.